Hello and welcome to the Animation Communication Podcast, your source for discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please join your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lauren Kizich, the Abbey Roadie, for today's discussion. If you like what you hear, please remember to support by giving a like, a follow, as well as subscribing to the main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube. Spread the word and keep being a part of a great community. This episode contains some mild adult language.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Animation Communication. I'm your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP for those new and or think the former is very confusing, which it is. Everyone tells me that. So this episode is about animation music stuff and just general music things in general, scoring for animation projects, scoring for fan projects, just making your own original music for the internet audience, because the internet is a great place where you can just upload stuff, and get feedback from people, and then everyone will tell you how much they don't like it, so yay. So any of the, any promising musicians, or maybe if you're in high school or middle school and you're like, I want to make fan video stuff, and I'm just like, okay, prepared not to make a lot of money, but you do that, golden child. So anyway, joining me is, as usual, my co-host Lauren. Say hi, Lauren, and how you doing?
Yes, hello everybody. This is a very, very exciting, very beautiful day. So it'll be a great podcast.
It's hot today on my end. I regret
regret
wearing leggings, but oh well. I like pain. It's fine. So and then I have my guests. So we have Kyle Allen, who has a big musician channel on YouTube, and then my friend Thomas, who is a team member who's been on the team for several years at this point, and he has scored the majority of my projects since that point, I guess. So Kyle, you want to say hi first and do a little quick intro before we get into the news?
Yeah, hey, so my name is Kyle. I am the owner of a channel called Kyle Allen Music. And basically, I am a nerd that makes songs about games on YouTube, and I'm working towards doing more original stuff. But yeah, that's my job pretty much, and it's really fun.
Yeah, this guy is baller. He's been making music for video games, for movies, for TV shows, for like pretty much everything. You've been running the gamut on like so much pop culture. You're
yeah. Yeah, pretty much whatever I can do and whatever I'm asked to like help on, I will just pretty much go for it. Take every chance I get and just work on whatever I can.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And Thomas, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? Why do you make music? Like briefly.
That's a very philosophical question. So I'm basically I'm trying to get into music for video games and film and TV. I've recently finished my masters for sound and music in games. I've done some game jams and scored a short film, and I've done the animations for Team KP.
What are some of the things that you scored off the top of your head? Because I don't remember. So.
Okay, so I remember my first one for definite, which is What If KP Was Discord Again. Yeah, that was a really fun one to work on. I did the Discordantly one. I might be mispronouncing that. I don't know how to say words.
Yeah, that's correct. You're good.
And what's the most recent one? The most recent one was that channel trailer that just came out. I did the piano piece for that. I was quite happy with it.
Remind me? Did you record or did you do the music for what's
Princess Bride?
Well, that, but what's the other one?
What's
the one that we made? Where Discord is sad because he gets excommunicated. I don't remember. I'll think about it.
That sounds like a lot of Discord.
Yeah,
no, that was Discordantly, weren't it?
No,
I'm sure that's the one where he's super sad.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's a theme going on, but there's another one. I'll think about it.
Okay.
And thank you again, and thank you for joining us today too, Thomas. It's great to have you.
This is
on
the whole
board.
podcast. We try to figure out this thing that I made without Googling it. So
It's a game.
It's a game.
side project.
Okay, so we'll start as always with animation news, but not that we have a lot of it because, as usual in the coronavirus time of this recording, not much is happening for the most part. But there was a big story that broke that Lauren is very excited about. So Lauren, tell us about how excited you are.
Yeah, so apparently we have in this era of, pandemic fear and craziness, there has been obviously the rise, and we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, is a rise in video on demand releases, where movie studios have been transitioning their theatrical releases, or what was supposed to be a theatrical release, and they're moving them to VOD instead, in order to make profit that way. Trolls World Tour was the very first movie to be theatrically released and also put on VOD at the same time. This was Universal's test to see how well it would do. And it turns out, I think Trolls World Tour has already reached almost $100 million just from VOD alone within 3 weeks.
Wow.
And so Universal's considering that an extreme success, which I don't blame them. However, AMC and then backed up by Regal Cinemas, both are now saying, in retaliation against Universal's claim that they don't want to play Universal's movies anymore in their theaters at all. Saying
Wow.
like they truly believe that if the coronavirus wasn't happening and people weren't homebound, that Trolls World Tour still would have been successful in theaters and still would have made a lot of money. But I mean, given that's not our not really our reality right now. What's happened has happened and is still happening, and people are still responding really well to the movie, still downloading it, and more studios are gonna pretty much be slating their movies for VOD release at this point until people can go back to theaters. That is, if we have enough theaters to go back to after this all clears up. AMC has not been doing too well financially. They've been kind of trying to keep their head above water at this point because nobody's going to the theaters. And then Regal Cinema is also pretty much, I believe, in the same situation. So yeah, it's kind of a mess for the theaters right now. But now everybody's saying that Trolls World Tour is some like controversial film when really it isn't. It's just like I'm
Wait,
like
what?
they're saying it's controversial only because of all of this whole mess with AMC and Regal. It's just made to be a happy, fun film that the families can enjoy,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think so too. And I think everything is moving to digital these days. Everything's going online. And as much as I love going to the theater and getting that social experience, which I'm still gonna do once this virus is gone, I still think there's a high demand for online as well, because that's that immediate factor.
mm-hmm. People want stuff right now. We're kind of been. I mean, we were already a cultural. Pardon me, I can speak of instant gratification, and so,
Mhm.
but then fuel that with people being stuck at home with nothing to do, and they're like, well, I want to see movies. Yeah, then obviously it's like people will throw money at it because they're stuck at home and they want to see something new. So that's what happened with Scoob. I don't know if you guys heard the news about that. Like I know KP, you know that.
I live,
but Scooby-Doo is supposed to be released, the new Scooby-Doo movie, which is supposed to launch the whole Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. They moved.
Really? That's real.
Yes, I'm not kidding.
Okay.
I mean, you'll see when the movie comes out. They've been teasing it a whole bunch in the trailers with with Dynamite, and they're gonna have obviously Dick Dastardly and Muttley.
I've got a question.
So they're trying.
Is
Yeah.
is the Harlem Globetrotters and John Cena part of the Hanna-Barbera?
if you believe
cinematic
hard
universe?
enough.
Yes.
I mean, it's like they technically, if you want to include the home releases where they have been using the WWE brand to help boost both Hanna-Barbera properties and WWE.
Oh, and
then
Kiss.
yes, we can.
Of course, Kiss, yeah.
And Kiss had one of the best ones, by the way, for Scooby-Doo. But the rock and roll mystery. But yeah, anyway, the Scooby-Doo movie called Scoob, is still going to be released on May 15th as it was supposed to be released in theaters, but they're instead moving it to strictly VOD, as we're pretty sure we're looking at this as theaters are not going to be opening anytime soon this month, at least as far as we can tell. So, Warner Brothers was pretty quick to jump on the gun to like switch it out for VOD. Everybody was kind of worried, like, what's going to happen now? All these like Warner Brothers movies are being either delayed and they don't have a date as to when they're going to be released, and then they just revealed, oh, we're going to VOD with them. So
yeah, I just wanted to say I feel like in the next 100 years or so, like freeballing it a little bit, I think theaters will become obsolete. People won't see the need, besides the social experience, people won't see the need to really go to theaters, and especially with the rise of, like, I think what's happening is the coronavirus is forcing, sociological changes that were probably going to happen anyway to happen faster. Like, the whole, like, craze as far as ordering groceries online and picking them up at the store, like, that was a thing before the coronavirus, but now people are much more dependent on it, and I think, I don't know the intricacies of having a movie play in a theater, but I imagine there's some sort of licensing fee, and if companies don't want to do that or don't want to deal with that, then there doesn't seem to be a lot of repercussions for just releasing it digitally on their end. And I kind of think of how different things would be if the Disney sequels were being released this way, like 10 years or 20 years later. I don't know, I'm old. So, but I think it's just funny that AMC is basically acting like a spoiled child, that it's just like, well, fine, if they don't want to play with us, we're just going to block them. And, like, they're not going to have that choice to keep on blocking studios that just want to stream on demand, as time goes on. I think that's just a really, like, foolish, immature decision, but, I don't know. I can see that it's a very emotional one. And as much as, like, people like Steven Spielberg are like, go see films and movies and stuff like that, like, I think theaters will still be around as just kind of like a, as a Hollywood thingy, like, just for the atmosphere, but I see just the general theater populace as far as just around the country, unless it's a Star Wars, it just, people like what's convenient, and, if they just want to see something and it's easier to stream it on demand than going to the movie theater to see it, then they're just gonna do that. And, like, everyone was just like, oh, Netflix will never replace Blockbuster, mohaha, and, yeah, look how that happened. So I think theaters are kind of in the same.
How much does that age us that we reference Blockbuster?
It
remember Hollywood Video?
God.
It's now here in its time of need.
I think there's still one Blockbuster in the country, or like in existence right now, but it's like independently one.
There's one, and I believe there's one in, I think, Alaska. It's either Alaska or Oregon.
I think it's Oregon, because I remember that John Oliver tried to help save the Alaska one, but it failed. That's right. So that was just Oregon.
That's right. So yeah, so Oregon's the only one left. That's right, because when it was down to 2, it was Alaska and Oregon. But then, yeah, you're right. So it is Oregon. So that one's still running. So guys, go visit. Anybody in Oregon, go visit your local.
They have T-shirts that say, "We're the last Blockbuster."
You can go in a car. I need a plane.
Go ahead, Thomas.
I'd need a plane, or maybe some very strong swimming arms and legs.
Just
to try and get to where Oregon or Alaska.
That's a British reference. So he's from Britain, so that's why he's saying ocean. I'm just like,
how could people possibly tell I'm British from my
accent? I don't know. I'm just
impossible.
I don't know.
Don't you know?
Don't you know? Okay, well,
cup of
tea, all of the stereotypes. Like, I think half of my I was just
tea is underrated.
Tea time. Anyway, yeah, I think half the team is British at this point, like currently, but whatever. So we'll move on to the topic at hand, which is making music for the internet and making both fan and original content. So we'll start with we'll do it this way. We'll ask the questions, and then Kyle can answer, and then Thomas can answer, and we'll go back and forth. And feel free to.
Oh, is that
yeah? I mean, I'm just establishing an order, so we're not all talking over each other. So, and feel free. Obviously, everyone can have a dialogue, and they're just like, "Huh, that sounds interesting. Tell me tell me more
How
about the tea.
about-
So go ahead, Kyle.
How about we ask the questions?
I don't
and
write
you
music,
answer it?
so I don't know how great that would be. But you can try that.
We'll switch it up a little bit.
I can only carry that discussion so
What's
far.
your favorite kind of music, KP? And like the kind that is already made. So that's my interview.
Yeah, that narrows it down.
The kind that I listen to on my phone. There we go. Okay, so I'm kind of freeballing it. So Lauren, if you have any more intricate questions than just like, the basics, feel free to jump in and yell at me. So I guess starting with Kyle. So Kyle, tell us a little bit about growing up and realizing you like music and, kind of having that become a part of your identity as a person. Deep philosophical questions.
Yes. Okay, so I grew up in a musical family, which is pretty common, I guess, for most musicians. We kind of either had at least one musical parent. And let's see, my mom was a music teacher, and my dad played guitar. And when I was little, I think I kind of realized that, well, I didn't know that I wanted to make music until high school. But I kind of figured that music was a huge part of my life at a young age. Because, like, I would, especially with singing, I would tap on things around the house, like a vase or a bowl or whatever. And then I'd sing back the pitch that it kind of resonated. So that was, like, a huge, sign from my parents that they should probably put me in some kind of music program. And then I joined a boys choir for about 5-6 years. And after that, I just did more choirs all through high school, middle school, etc. Even into college a little bit. And I learned most of my music theory and music in general just through choir. And then I was self-taught music writing. So I learned how to write music on my own. I started with a program called Sibelius, which is basically writing music with notation and notes and stuff and sheet music. And then I switched to a more not professional, but a more modern, so I have more stuff to do. I can do more things with it, and that's FL Studio, which is very high-end production kind of stuff you can do with it. And that's what I use now. So it was around right after I decided to drop out of college, I did a fan song for this game called Bendy and the Ink Machine. And that I didn't really know much about the game other than like it was like really reminiscent of Disney, like the older like 1950s, 1930s Disney. And the style was really unique. It was really creepy. And I'm like, oh, I got to do a song on this. So I whipped up something in like, 3-4 hours, not knowing at all like what was going to happen afterwards. And it was apparently one of the first ones of that game, like the first fan songs for that game. And that's how I got introduced to this community called the Nerdcore community. That's how I got, into that. That song then got remixed by Living Tombstone, and that led me to meeting DA Games. And then I started making more fan songs, and then I kind of just built my roots into this whole like community of making songs about games. And then after that, I got like more, options to do things for films and comics and all these other things. And it just keeps surprising me and getting and changing all the time. And that's how I kind of got into what I'm doing now.
Oh, that's great. And so it really did all start with Bendy, huh? So and you hadn't you hadn't played the game, you hadn't seen much of it. Had you seen gameplay of it or something like that, or how? Because I mean, how does the inspiration strike for something that you haven't like played or anything?
I learned about it because I knew the Meatly before he was famous.
Okay.
I knew the Meatly, the creator of the game, before the like. Because I remember he would like I was following him on Twitter because he would post all these really funny comics about game development, which I also do on the side. I make games on the side, but I related to those comics a lot because they were so funny. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know that struggle about doing this with games, and yeah. And then he kept posting things about how he's working on a small game called Bendy, and I'm like, oh wow, this looks really cool, really unique style. It's like, you know, everything is made of artwork. That's so cool. And once he released it, I kind of just checked it out. I watched a Let's Play on it real quick, and then I made the song, and that was it. That was history after that.
Wow.
Does he still talk to you, even though he's more famous now?
Sometimes he'll reply to my stuff on the Bendy content, but he is so busy. He is
that's usually
busy.
what happens. From what I can tell. Lauren, can you tell about the Seth MacFarlane thing with Butch real quick? Because I think it's similar.
Yeah. I was gonna say I'm friends with Butch Hartman, and he did kind of say like that he and Seth MacFarlane used to work together back at Cartoon Network, and basically at in the midst of the Hanna-Barbera stuff. So and he did mention at one point, like, you know, Seth MacFarlane used to room with him and stuff like that when he was a young and a little kid artist, and not really a kid, but, you know, kid in the industry. And then basically things took off after Family Guy, and he like rarely ever hears from him. But I'm like, do you ever get to hear from him? And he's like once in a blue moon maybe, but he's just like, he's kind of so busy that I'm just like, oh, imagine that he was this kid that, you know, roomed with me and my then girlfriend, now wife, and when we were working at Hanna-Barbera. And so I thought that's
so interesting.
Yeah, and so really cool guy, lots of amazing stories, and kind of the same situation.
Yeah, and I think something that people will often confuse that lack of response as being ignored because they're bigger, but that's rarely the case. I'm starting to realize is that they're not really ignoring you, because they're just so busy. They're constantly working. They're constantly having to manage a lot of people and make sure that the things they're working on get out on time and these deals are being made. And yeah, it's difficult. It's definitely difficult for them. So I'm starting to realize that more and more.
Have lack of responsibility in that sense.
Yeah.
To sort of keep up with these projects.
Definitely. I mean, I don't consider myself a big YouTuber. I still consider myself like still growing and stuff. But even I'm starting to get to that point too, where I don't respond to my friends as much because I have a lot of responsibility and I have a lot of work to do. And I just don't want them thinking that I'm like neglecting them or anything.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people it ends up being this situation because you can only answer so many messages and keep in touch with so many people at a time without going insane. So it's I was just gonna do an ad lib or like a little subsection of that. Like my golden rule as far as that is just like, if you're busy, then that like life is a bitch sometimes, but just tell the other person like, hey, I'm busy, I'll probably get back to you like in a couple of weeks, but I'm doing this thing right now. And the other thing on the other side of the spectrum, don't ever demand someone's attention, and don't be like, you have to respond to me right now, this instant, or else. I've had fan experiences that way, and it just seems like I don't like, you know,
same.
We
don't owe you anything. We don't owe you our time just because you're like, you know, aggressive, and don't kind of assume that just because someone's active on social media, even though like posts you sending them a message, that's not necessarily them ignoring you. That's just like, you know, they might be in a different place where they're just trying to cool down, and they're just like, I don't want to talk to another person, I'm just going to post my memes on Twitter and then be done for the day, and then that's kind of how things forget. So, you know, my advice is just like, if just be like, hey guys, I'm busy, I will get back to you like around this time, so that way your friends kind of know that you're not dead, but you don't feel bad for just ignoring them outright. So
yeah, and I try and usually go through my messages towards the end of the night, because that way I'm done with my work, I'm settling down, like I'm starting to relax, and I can just go through everything and, you know, do that.
All right, backtracking to Thomas. So Thomas, what was your childhood like? How did you know you wanted to start making music, and, you know, that kind of thing? How much?
Let us begin this dark tale. Gruesome Tales for Gruesome Kids, or whatever it was called. Okay, so when you meant, sorry, this is a bit of tiny side note, but when you mentioned Sibelius, that took me back, back to like secondary school, and in a way, the horrors, because I was not fond. Making anything harder than hot cross buns took forever. So yeah, my parents are, you know, interested in music. My mum did some singing before, and my dad did a bit of guitar, but not too much. And basically, like my brother and I would play in like a metal band together when I was about 13. So I was playing guitar at 11. And that's the start into music and into games. Like when I was a child, I loved video game music, but no one else I knew cared, like, or even heard it as proper music, and I thought that was weird. But when I was in college, I found out that some people actually did that for a living and not just a hobby. So I started trying to look into it. And so I was doing a music performance course for guitar and contemporary music. But on the side, alongside doing that, I was trying to learn how to do music for film and game on my own. And actually, KP, you were the I believe you were the first experience I got in music for moving images. Like on my college course, I did stuff for the course that you got to do music to a scene, but doing music for this channel was the first time I got to actually communicate with a team and score to something that hasn't had music before, if you know what I mean. So I was doing that and the stuff on the KP music is I think is part of the reason I got onto my masters, because it was showing experience with music to images, because I had only done like 2 game jams. Should I explain what a game jam is?
Yes, please.
Okay, so like a game jam is an event where people, a bunch of people, like form little teams to make a game within a certain time frame, like typically 48 hours, could be more, could be less. I recommend it. Okay, if anyone here is interested in music for games specifically, go onto a place called itch.io, the website itch.io. On that place you can find every game jam that's running, and there's stuff running all the time, sometimes online, sometimes in person, so I recommend it. So I was, doing the game jams, doing KP, and then I did like a short film with Bennett. Why did I say Barrett? Bennett, and called A Shattered Vow. And that was really good experience.
Bennett was a past team member, so in case you just don't know who just Bennett, singular name is, then that's who that is. But anyway, continue.
Bennett. And so I've just done the master's course. That's taught me a lot. I did sound and music for interactive games at Leeds Beckett University. There's a tutor there called Richard Stevens, and he's a really good teacher. So that's basically my experience. I mainly did guitar, guitar, bass, and vocals in like metal bands, and then just general contemporary music. And then I sort of transitioned from that into what I want to do. Essentially, my things changed over time as I realised it was something viable to do if you really work hard at it, and that, That's it, basically.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in before we move on to the more technical questions. So, my questions are for you two. This part should be rather short, but where do you guys particularly find your inspiration for making both fan content and original I say original animations as a go-to original music, because I know, especially with fan content, when you're monetizing is tricky, and sometimes you can't do it if you're using specific assets or a specific, the song can be picked up on the YouTubes or whatever. So there's a chance that it just might be non-profit or in Creative Commons or whatever. So where do you guys find your inspirations to continue to still write music, if that's the case, if it's in a fan content setting? And then similar question, but for original music, where do you guys find your general inspirations?
Yeah, I'll go first. So since this is something I do pretty much on a daily basis, it typically doesn't fall into any copyright or anything like that, because like the melody's original, the lyrics are original, everything's pretty much original except for the what I'm singing about and the characters that I'm singing about. And typically the people who who made the content that I'm singing about, they don't mind. They're pretty much just like, you're promoting my content, so go for it. So I just say, just don't rip anything from the people who made it unless they're okay with it. Like, if you're making a 3D music video or something, make sure you get their permission first. Or if you're gonna use the vocals from something, or to remix it, make sure you get the permission first. And then once you get all that, then you can kind of just put it all together, go for it, get creative. But yeah, do your research first before starting to do all that, because then you're risking it. Then you're risking getting, a copyright strike from, big companies like Warner Brothers.
I was gonna say, your workaround sometimes, Kyle, is sometimes that you have guest vocalists and stuff, like Elsie Lovelock and stuff like that. So is that kind of how you work around in case so you don't have to worry about taking somebody's game vocals or anything like that?
No. I kind of just work with people because I just love what they do. I don't really think about the benefit for me and what it's gonna help me with copyright or anything like that. I love having something other than myself sing in the vocals, especially if it's a girl's voice. I can't do a girl's voice, so I gotta have someone who can do a girl's voice sing the vocals, and after a while you start kind of narrowing it down to your two favorite people you like to work with, because they get back to you on time, and they love working with you, and you got a good flow.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other episode of dealing with producer problems. What about you, Thomas? What is your motivations for both fan music and then original music or stuff? I just say, hey, I need this thing. Please do it.
Yeah. So, first part, I don't really have anything to add, because I don't make obviously I'm making fan music for this channel, but I don't personally feel the repercussions of a strike or I don't have any monetization from it, so I can't what's the word, relate to that kind of thing. Motivation for original music is more I think the motivation is partly keeping yourself busy, and you have to remind yourself that I think it can be I think sometimes some musicians I know don't practice enough in a way, because when you're writing music for stuff like this, you're not only doing it to have a finished product and be done with it. it's practice. You're learning from it, and I think that's part of what drives me to keep doing it. Is to make myself better, and it's good to experiment with different techniques. Here's an example. With KP, I did the music for the Discord one where
You're gonna have to be more
Discord.
specific.
Discord, KP. No, it's the Mickey Mousing one where we used the Mickey Mouse technique for the music.
It's the
Discord
one where
goes
he
through
goes
the
in.
portal.
Yeah.
Equestria Girls. Yeah, that's it. So I'd seen that technique in certain films, and mainly older animation, but I had never done it before. So something like that, it's like a new challenge, and you're teaching yourself a new skill by doing it. And I think that is good motivation, being able to try something different, and even if you're doing something where they don't give you a very particular direction, that's when you give yourself your own challenge to try something new.
So you kind of, instead of just kind of having more of like a typical like artistic muse, like inspiration, I have to write this thing down. It's more like putting yourself in situations where you have to do something you're not familiar with, and approaching it as an actual kind of challenge, or stretching your legs and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
So what? I don't know if this is exactly the question, but one more little thing is in terms of inspiration for writing music, the way my mind works, and I've heard it's different for other people. Have you ever heard about the thing where people hear in colour, hear music in colour or in visuals, or anything like that? Have you heard of that before?
Isn't that just what Fantasia is as a general concept?
I guess, but
yeah,
there's people who are sort of like that, and I'm like that in that when I hear music, I see visuals, I visualize music in a cinematic way, and I have a couple of friends who hear music in color. So when they're writing music or hearing stuff, they see it as a color, as a feeling. So when I hear and it also works in reverse in that when I see the animation that's sent to me, or the game, I hear music comes to me straight away, or I'm churning stuff out in my head before I put anything on paper. That's basically how I sort of am inspired to write music, if that makes sense, to visuals.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
Yeah, because some people just that's how the creative flow works. That's how their brain works, and that's awesome that it's just it just comes to you naturally.
Kyle,
Mm-hmm.
how do you sort of perceive music in that sense? I'm curious. Do you...
are you asking if I associate colors and music together?
I mean, it doesn't have to be specifically that, but for example, let's say when you're doing, I don't know, you mentioned Bendy and the Ink Machine, right? You did music for that. Was there visuals for that video? The music you made? Was it a video, or was it just audio?
Oh, no, it was just for that very first one, I had no idea what I was going to do for the video, because it was my second video I've made that was kind of fan inspired. So it was just honestly a background and then a pulsating bendy head.
Okay.
That's all it was.
Right, so maybe that's not
it
the
wasn't
best
much
example for me then.
No, but going on to the more and more into the future, where I am now, I will often make the songs imagining a story going with it and seeing like kind of setting it up, because it makes it easier for the animators to get better ideas for storyboarding with me and figuring out ideas to put into the music video. If I make it more like interactive and flow more and little things like that. So I guess that's something.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting.
I also can have that thing though where I can hear colors, I guess you can say.
Oh, you do too.
Yeah, I have that a little bit myself. Yeah, I don't rely on it for anything, but like if I see the color green, I think of a beautiful like green landscape, and I think of Ireland, and then I kind of think of like more like a Irish
Folk,
like music or like film score kind of a thing. Or if I think of blue, I think of like the ocean. I think more like harp music and more peaceful like legato strings. Red, I think more harsh music, but it can be interpreted differently too. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cheers for answering.
Lauren, do you want to do the next question?
Yeah, sure. So that was talking about inspiration. Talking about you, Kyle. You have this incredible team that helps create stellar music videos, and
Oh gosh, they're amazing.
Yeah. So when did you start developing your team? How did you pull your team together?
Oh man, they are amazing people. They are just talented as heck, and I wish I could do what they do, but I can't because they are so talented. Okay, so it started with when I first started doing all of this, I had no references. I all I knew what to do was what I did by myself. But I started looking into other people who do what I do and seeing like what they do. And I started looking for freelancers that work with those people, people who aren't like specifically contracted to only work with those people, who can work with others. And I found people like Pedro and Andrew, for example, who worked on Living Tombstones videos quite a bit. And since we collaborated, I got to talk to them and meet them and hire them eventually for a couple things. And it really started with, I think it started with those guys, Andrew and Pedro, who do a lot of After Effects things. But I'm trying to think I can't remember what. That was so long ago. Give me like a second. I'm actually gonna open up my playlist here and just go through them. Okay, so it started with the first one I did actually was a 3D music video, which was before the Bendy song. It was on Five Nights at Freddy's, and that one I found just an animator out there. It was my first time, experiencing that, and it was like I kind of got thrown into like how to work with an animator right away. And then after that, I did the Bendy song, and then after that, I started doing other things. So yeah, it was Andrew. I did start working with Andrew for the first videos after that. And then I started meeting more people. And then the more I grew, I started putting out posts being like, hey, I want to work with more people. If you do this and this, reach out to me, send me an email. And I'd get emails, and then I'd like check them out, check out their stuff. And I still do that. And then I built a little Discord server with all these people in it, and I organize all of the projects, and I give everyone tags on what they do, and we all talk. And it's almost become like a small family at this point, because all of us are in constant communication. This is all like, our channel at this point, even though it's got my name on it. Like, I still consider this our channel. And it's just, they always surprise me. Every single time they surprise me with something new. And it's hard to believe that I have like a business now, or I guess a family business. I don't know.
Old family recipe.
Yeah, really. I do consider these people family though, and they've all been here for the long term, and every new person we bring onto this project is just, it's great to see new work and new skills being added to it. So
yeah, that's basically, exactly what I do. essentially. Thomas, how long have you been on the team? Like several years at this point?
3
Yeah,
years. Give or take.
He just
probably a little longer than 3.
He lives under the stairs now. It's fine.
Yeah, I upgraded.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like 12 in internet years.
It's weird because you go from, I started off doing freelancing. I was just a freelance musician who would make songs for disc games. And then after that, I started doing my own stuff. But it was really weird because I was used to being the one getting hired, and I had to make that mental switch to hiring others. And that was very weird because I had to start becoming more of a business person. I started having to, whip up contracts and tax forms and all these other crazy things. Organizing payments, setting aside my income to pay people, and it's just the transition over the last 3 or 4 years has just been crazy because you're not used to doing things like that.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, I was gonna say you start to learn to balance like the left brain and right brain in those respects, where you have to be creative, but you're also looking at things from that business perspective and having to look at the legalities and the technicalities and all the other alities.
Yeah, and here's the hardest part, though, with that, is that you can't let the business side take over, ever. Because often you'll find people in this industry, the business side will start taking over, and then you'll start seeing the content from those people suffering because of that, because they start thinking it as in not just, what started off being creative and making your own stuff and growing in that awesome drive to keep going with that and growing as a musician becomes, what can I do to make a quick buck? What can I do to hit the trends and make more money? And you stop thinking with your heart and you start thinking with your brain. And I've fallen into that pit a couple times. But every time I've gotten like thrown out because I keep telling myself I can't do that. As much as I want to keep finding trends and immediately going to hopping on those trends and making money from it, I know that that's not going to be what I want to do. And inside, I'm not going to be feeling passionate about it.
I know the feel.
And plus at the same time, I mean, even if it were a trend, it's got to be something you like. It can't be just something that you're doing emptily for the sake of cashing in on it, like you said, just for that moment.
Always.
Because it's like, unless you really like it and you're truly inspired by it, it's like, otherwise there's really nothing truly driving it.
Yeah, like people will often ask me, like, why'd you make so many bendy songs? Like, why are you making so many bendy songs? Are you grinding to get more trends and, that's what works? And I'm like, not really, no. Like, they're always surprised when I say no. I actually genuinely enjoy the game.
Yeah, exactly.
I same with Five Nights at Freddy's. It's like you think that by now most people would be done with it, but there's still a part of me that really holds on to that nostalgia from the first 3 or 4 games, and I'm like, I still really want to keep going with it, and it's like,
yeah, Scott clearly is not done with it either.
Yeah, I think he's the same way. I think that there's still a part of him that really, like, relishes and remembers the good old times from when he first started working on it. I think he even said it in a Reddit post recently that he wishes he can go back to those days when it was just him working on it. And I totally get it. I absolutely totally get it. I think, that nostalgia from the beginning of everything is what keeps us going. It's what keeps us wanting to make things, and I love it.
Yeah, never forget your roots.
Never forget your roots. That's a great way to sum that up.
Because I'm surprised how much a lot of this is crossing over from what I do, and I don't know how intimate you are with my channel and what I do, but we basically do something very similar where we have a production team, and we make content. For the past and at the beginning, it was about My Little Pony, and now it's kind of, I never say like we've moved on. It's more like we're slowly expanding to just talk about general animation and do general animation projects, and we have our first original animation in production, which has been on halt because mostly because of the coronavirus stuff, which makes things complicated, as well as the voice person I want to have on it is also complicated. Essentially, is the understatement of the century. But yeah, I think that the main difference, which is mostly the big difference between me and other people that are content producers on YouTube, is I'm non-profit. Like, you know, everyone's here on a volunteer basis, which, you know, everyone is told that ahead of time, and it's obviously dependent on the individual with what they personally want to gain out of the experience. And I really like adamant about, like, I don't, you know, if you don't want to be here, like, don't be here. Like, what are you wanting to get out of this? So it's not just like, because I think people are blinded by the whole, like, oh, this person has, you know, this kind of following, and they look at like things like the subscriber number, and they think, oh, well, how can I personally benefit from doing specific things, whether you're monetizing or not. And like, you just, like, you know, you don't want to, like, as a producer, as a creator, you don't want to have that in, you know, the atmosphere. You don't want to work with someone with that mindset, because it leads to unflexibility, it might lead to some miscommunication, it might lead to dishonesty, and it just, like, it's not a good, healthy working environment in general. But yeah, I think the good thing, there's pros and cons about being nonprofit, but I think the biggest pro is I'm not personally limited with my creative freedom as what I want to do. Is it's just a matter of how long it will take time-wise, you know, how am I going to divvy up the work, you know, will this be worth it if we're going to do frame-by-frame animation versus just doing the usual visuals, that kind of thing. But in doing that way and keeping it non-profit, it has, like, everyone here has to be motivated by, and Thomas, feel free to jump in, and Lauren, you know, does teamwork too when as needed. So, but everyone kind of, I lost my train of thought, but but anyone, you know, it has to come from a place of passion, because if not, then no one's gonna want to do it. You know, like, I'm not, like, and I think, like, money is kind of, it does complicate things for good and worse. And, you know, I'm starting to slip into it becoming a business by doing conventions and making money on my own artwork for conventions, and, like, you know, paying team members if they're doing, like, a poster design or a t-shirt design. And, you know, like, because I am, you know, I'm not gonna say, hey, do this for free and then I'll make money from it. That's not right. So you know, but I think that just comes down to a lot of internet collaboration projects in general, is, like, you have to be clear with your communication, and you kind of just have to want to be there, whether it's monetized or not, because, like, if someone doesn't want to be there, you can tell just by their attitude, just by, you know, how flexible they are with, like, your notes, or, you know, how much they know about the property, you know, things like that. But I guess let's backtrack and get on the music stuff, because we can do producer episode like all day, every day, because, like, that is the bane of my existence.
Well, there was one thing that you said in there that actually I wanted to point out, and it's that when people start thinking about the numbers, and they look at the subscriber count and the views, and they're like, whoa, 15-20 million views, that's unfathomable, I want to have that. And, you know, I think starting out when you have nothing and you're looking up at, like, when you have nothing to do but look up and see all these creators ahead of you, you have nothing but the urge to want to get there as well. And I think that's what drives people to get into this, because when I started out, yes, I had a passion for these games, and yes, I wanted to make songs about them, but a huge factor for me wanting to get into this as well was because I wanted to be up there with them. And I think that's what gets a lot of content creators into YouTube. So I don't necessarily think it's like a bad thing. I think if you still have it once you've already established yourself, then it becomes a bad habit. But I think when you're starting out and all you can do is look up, I mean, just go for it. Yeah, that's a great goal to get started and start getting towards 100 subscribers, 1,000 subscribers, you know, 20, 30, 50. And then you just start to realize, wow, I'm establishing myself. I'm actually doing something, and I'm really proud of it. So yeah, always work towards a higher goal. Always.
I think like, not from the like leader of a team point of view, but from the fan point of view, you know, you've been mentioning about profit versus passion, essentially, which there's always a balance to maintain. And I think that generally most fans will notice like a lack of passion. And I think I've seen a few channels where they have sort of gone more on the profit side, and it is obvious to people that they see that the person is still passionate, so they continue to support them through what they're doing. So even though they are, looking more at profits and maintaining a format, they still, if they still feel that the creator is doing it because they are enjoying it as well, not just to make money, then I think that's how part of how the balance is kept, where people still want to support you. That's how I feel from what I see anyway.
In my new business model in general, and I think a lot of people's, when they've already hit a specific cap, like in general, like our channel hasn't had a lot of growth in the last couple of years just because we've been sticking mostly with My Little Pony stuff, and I haven't been collaborating, and there's been other factors as well. But I think the growth for more, and like you can by growing, you can kind of share your passions with people that might not have found you another way, like like for animation content in general, if you're a prominent creator and you talk about like an underrated show or movie or whatever, and people are drawn to you because they're familiar with you as the creator, but then you're introducing people to a new medium or a new thing that they potentially might really like, and then you're doing a service to that original thing because you're showing people it, which is I think is really important. But anyway, okay, back to music. So so Kyle,
hey, back to music.
It's all tied into the same.
Yeah, it's fine. But Kyle, I guess Kyle first as usual, but like break down your work process, like getting up FLA studios, and how do you kind of break down, because you guys are working from very different perspectives as far as like the main person, the main creative vision versus getting assigned something that needs a score, I guess, to put it a little plainly. So Kyle, how do you start? How do you do your stuff?
Yeah, so you ask this to any creator, every response is different. Sometimes they'll say, oh, I make the instrumental first. Oh, I make the lyrics first. Oh, I record myself singing a melody and then I put the lyrics in and then I do the instrumental. Or it's like, oh, I go to the piano first. Oh, I play it on my guitar, whatever. Like there's a different answer for everyone. There's no right way of doing anything. And for me, I'm not the best lyricist. And I didn't really start doing lyrics until I started doing all of this, so about 3 years ago. But hearing instrumentals and making instrumentals in my head was always like my go-to. So I'll often make the instrumental first, and then I'll write the lyrics and then just improv a melody to it, like on the spot. I'll just think of something and then hit record. But yeah, that's usually what I do, and then. So like what I usually do is instrumental, make the lyrics, record it, and then I export every single layer to the instrumental and the lyrics and the singing and whatever. And then I send the vocals to my vocal processing guy, who makes sure that all the pitches are like perfectly in sync and everything, like tunes it up a little bit. Yeah. And then I go to my mixing guy. I have two guys. And then my mixing guy Matrix will Nathan will just go ahead and mix it all up, and we'll review it together, make sure we get the thing we want to sound like, and then I get it all together here, and then I send to the video editor. While they're doing that, like I'll usually have the video editor or the animator have like a demo version while they work on it, and then I'll send them the final one. They'll give me the whole video. And then at the very end, I schedule the video, throw the song in stores. And then while that's being uploaded, we wait, and then it gets uploaded.
We wait. I'm thinking about
it's a lot of steps. Yeah, it's a lot of steps.
And specifically with your instrumental stuff, like how does that work? Do you like record yourself like singing a melody and then you translate that to FLA Studios, like, or you just start?
So a lot of people will use a keyboard to like put in the notes and stuff. I was never really a pianist or anything like that, so I just kind of put in the notes manually, and I just go straight into it. Yeah, I pick out the instruments I want, and then I put in the notes, and I just keep trying it again and again and again, putting more stuff, more layers, and I just keep working on it for as long as I can until it's complete.
I just kind of like just go like. Writing for me is always the easiest process, and then recording is always the worst because it's just talking to yourself
it's the most therapeutic.
You know, I guess it's different because it's just like you're just working on yourself for a while. I feel like there's a masturbation Dorindo in here somewhere, but anyway, it's just like you know, that's the most isolating process in general, and then you get to like open the floodgates, as it were, and you know, like this is done. What do you think? I have my pre-reader saying like, what do you think? Are my points clear? Like, is this good? Is this funny, kind of thing? So, and so what about you, Thomas? What is your general creative process when you're making music?
Okay, so I will go through that, but I wanted to ask kind of a follow-up question to him, and I guess I'll add it to my own at the end. So, I wanted to know, do you have any particular musical techniques you tend to favour, Kyle? Like, do you think about anything related to music theory when you write?
Oh yeah, all the time. Since I grew up with a music theory background, Can
I interject? Can you define music theory for people who might not know what it is?
Me?
Yeah, I'm bad at giving definitions.
One of you.
It's like
okay.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's like the way I think of it is if you think of music like a clock, the music theory is the gears inside. So, like, music theory is about the technicality of music, like how, for example, like how notes relate to each other, and sort of how music is constructed. You know, like if you're someone who doesn't think about it as much, when they hear a piece of music, they might not give it a second thought. There might be things like patterns or certain, certain rhythms, and music theory kind of explains that, and it can also help guide what, can also sort of define what, how certain things in music work and how you can use them to your advantage. Is that a decent explanation, Kyle? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think so. It also can go into like thinking about chord structures. So like when a chord is layered, you can like if you raise a note in a chord by just one little bit, it changes the entire like what the chord is.
Yeah.
And every single chord pretty much has like a name, and they can get really complex to the point where I don't even know what they are.
You can't play me a G major 9/11 flat 7 right now, man.
Oh my gosh, yeah. See, there are people who have doctorates in this stuff, and they can give you that right away. Like the guy who taught me how to sing, had a doctorate, and he was incredibly smart on all this stuff. Well, I'll never understand how he knows the things he knows, and he went to these insanely talented places and colleges growing up as a kid, but that wasn't the route for me. I went a different route. But growing up, the music theory was kind of more so like just planted into my head and grew over time to the point where I don't have to think about it logically. I don't think, okay, I'm gonna play a G major 7 on this one, and then an inverted this, that, and whatever. I just kind of, it's in me now. I don't have to think too much about it.
Versions are very important for like tonality, because you can play the same chord like three different ways, and even though it's the same chord, there's a different feeling depending on what note is on the bottom.
Yeah, and there are even some times where I would like listen to other people's songs, and I like, and I'd be like, I wonder what, like, how they designed this chord. So I tried replicating it. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just take the middle note from this simple major chord and drop it down an octave, and whoa, it sounds like that chord. It's completely different. Same chord, but different, layout for it. And I like it's fun to kind of use what you learned growing up with music theory and then putting your own twist on it, because there's something I learned in these classes with like choir and band, percussion, everything I was in. It's that music theory was meant to be broken.
Yes, agreed.
When you break music theory, that's when you truly get something original, and that's when you truly get something unique that you can put out there.
Some people ask why learn music theory if the point is to break it. The way you learn music theory so you know the best way to break it in a sense. So you understand how it all works and how the standard music structures or chord structures, and then you think, what if I changed it in this way or did this, and then that's how I think that's how it is. That kind of what you mean by the point of music theory is to break it, because I agree, definitely with you on that one. I'm thinking about you say you're into your games, aren't you? Like I saw a video a couple of weeks ago on have you played Final Fantasy VII, the original one?
No,
okay,
I have not, but I know of the Final Fantasy.
Like the victory fanfare, like in 7 specifically.
Yes.
There was a video like sort of breaking down that, and it is interesting because he doesn't think about music theory. He does it by feeling, but he's just very naturally gifted at picking out these things, and he uses because the theme is used as a victory theme, so it's usually that would be completely bright and cheerful and very standard stuff. But he has, you should listen to the track. He does some very interesting things in the music, and that's kind of like the music theory all makes sense, and a lot of it stays in very traditional notes that you'd have for that kind of theme, but then it expands into different things while still fitting the piece. If you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I'm getting every bit of this.
Yeah, okay. So
yeah, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
KP, what was the first question? Because
I was just thinking about that. I don't remember. I was asking you guys to break down.
Writing pros. Oh yeah. Right. So
yeah.
You use FL Studio, don't you, Chris? Kyle. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. I use FL Studio now.
So like for me, I started very. I started it. I actually the one I originally used is the one I still use now. I became quite attached. Is Logic Pro. When I started, it was Logic Pro 8 or 9, something like that. At first, we used it in college, and then when I got my own computer, I started with GarageBand until I could afford to buy Logic Pro and that. I use Logic Pro along with most of the VSTs record. So it's like the instruments is the way I describe it. I use most of the ones Logic provides, except for symphonic strings and percussion and all that. The one I use is expensive, so I don't recommend this, but I'll recommend a free one as well. I use East West Symphonic Orchestra.
Yep. Same.
Nice.
Oh my gosh,
So
East
good.
West is amazing.
It is. It's beautiful, but expensive.
You can't tell the difference between like a live performance and a, you know, what they do. It's crazy.
Yeah, that stuff is great. If you want to like up your sound game, go for it. If you can, they have a sale usually on July the 4th, because that's a holiday in America. I don't remember which one. Sorry, Americans.
I wish they had more sax. They don't have enough sax samples though. They need more saxophones.
Yeah,
I've looked everywhere on there for saxophones.
It's hard to
and
replicate very authentically, even with samples.
Especially saxophones. They've got a lot of techniques that they use. And I mean, they've got great brass. The Hollywood brass is amazing as well. This whole podcast is now going to be promoting East West.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored, no. Yeah, sponsor. But yeah, I love. I mean, for their saxophones though, or any kind of like pop brass. They have like a pop brass section I like to use a lot.
Yeah,
it's really good.
That's good stuff. So
sorry, keep going.
Right. But there are 3 orchestral ones. Like for orchestra, I do not, and I do mean do not recommend the Logic Pro built-in orchestral ones. They're not, even for like low end stuff, it's not great. But there is 3 options. So I was trying to find the one I used a while back, but sadly I can't seem to find it anywhere. But there is something called Sonatina Symphonic Orchestra, and that is free. And that, for a free VST, it's pretty good. And it seems to give a lot of instruments. So, and also I used so I don't remember the name of the sample pack, but Sforzando, like that's all one word, Sforzando, is like a
Sforzando.
That's how you pronounce it.
Yes.
I can't even.
Sforzando. It's music theory. It's like the that thing where you heart attack and then you grow from the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. And
Sforzando. It's a weird word. Sforzando.
Yeah,
like,
that's why.
I don't know. It's weird.
All those Italian words in music theory that torment me sometimes.
Some words stuck for me, some words don't. You forget some, you remember some.
Yeah, sometimes I look at something like a piece of music and I'm like, wait, what does that mean again? It's like, yeah. And then sometimes like, just in, it's like obvious it's that, but other times I'm confused.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry, I am getting a little off track, but what I mean is I use East West for orchestra, but there are free options and cheaper options that are good. I recommend, if you're looking into that, especially like the paid ones, you should listen for yourself first, like on some demos. Don't just listen to the first one. Listen to a few. See how it sounds. Look at reviews, online. I know there are some biased ones, especially if it's reviewed by someone, sponsored by the company. But, try and get a few different opinions and listen to yourself, and then decide if that's what you want to go with. So
there's also something I realized. When I had a lot of people who were starting out who asked me like what kind of orchestral samples to use. And even if you use like some basic samples that come with the program that you have, make just throw some reverb at it, and that'll kind of mask up that it sounds like a sample.
Yes, that's what I did with free Logic Pro Orchestra. just reverb, and it sounds less bad.
If you cover something up enough with reverb, you won't be able to tell too much that it's what it is. It'll sound a little more authentic.
Yeah, and
so that's another little tip.
This is kind of like cheese strats, but if you're using like for example the ones built into your door with Digital Audio Workshop. It's where you make the music. So if you're using like strings, for example, there's usually a bit of delay with the strings. So if you're looking for precision, move the notes slightly back. Like, have you ever done this, Kyle? You probably won't when you have the.
Yes. Because oftentimes it takes a little bit of time to kind of get to the peak of the beginning of that note. So you offset them back a little bit so it sounds more on time.
Yeah, like
only
I've done
that
little
too.
To tighten up the timing.
Yeah.
So that is a thing. I'm just going into tip mode, but yeah. So I use Logic.
Well, that was.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, kind of. I'll just ask the last question, and then I guess you guys can repeat some of the information / go into more detail. So usually, the ending question for this is we always try to advocate that people don't necessarily have to, go to some fancy music school or art school or whatever to learn these skills if they want to. Like, in this day and age with the internet having everything ever, you can learn a lot of stuff on your own. I think, and this will probably be more of a theme as we talk about more of the art fundamental episodes, is that you just kind of have to do it. We can tell you how to make music or make art or how to open Photoshop or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, it's up to you if you really want to do this, to take on that responsibility and start really like gripping down and doing it. And sometimes people need school as a kind of box to put themselves in to focus on that. Like I learn better with school, and it's very hard for me to learn stuff on my own. But yeah, so anyway, so with the internet, stuff like that, even not only just softwares that you guys use to write your own music that you can talk about the pros and cons or repeat some of them or go into detail or whatever the case. But for just kind of learning fundamental music theory and like learning how to read music and basic skills like that, do you guys have any recommendations for YouTubers that they can watch that break down like very beginner steps to kind of grow and grow any or just general advice for people who want to learn that might not have the resources to go to music college or what have you?
Even though that's not how I came about learning things, I definitely think that now, with how prominent the internet is and how much is out there, there's definitely an abundance of resources for you to learn all these things. And I think there's a lot of great tools and tutorials out there to learn how to do music theory, how to work in these programs, just everything's out there. Yeah.
Thomas, do you have any general? Do you have anyone specific to recommend?
Yeah. Like I said, I learned from self-study and from uni, and I don't tend to use online stuff, but I've been learning things like I've been learning video editing past month or two, just for leisure, and for the more important part, like coding in C sharp, because I want to do. I'm doing like music for games and that. This is another general tip thing. If you want to do music for games, learn at least about programming. You don't have to be able to program a game by yourself, but you should be able to understand and follow and help, because I think the difference nowadays, like between like if you're on a game jam or something, if you know how to code and implement the music yourself, people that gives a good impression of you, and it makes people want to work with you more, because you can sort of help and put in the music yourself, as well as help with like little bug things and that. So I think it makes you more gives you more skills to use. But yeah, so for tips, so like the reason I brought up video editing and all that is because stuff like not sponsored, Skillshare, for example. I've been using that for video editing stuff, and if you find the right course, you can really learn a lot. Like there's obviously different people teaching different things. You might have to go through a couple of courses to find one that suits you, but I find that that's really helpful, especially since most of them do series and it's all consistently made. So for music theory, for example, like I think it's important to learn sheet music. So I'm trying to think of there's a few different places you can get sheet music from, and you should practice reading something simple. And I think it's also important to know stuff like the circle of fifths, which explains how keys work, like key signatures. I'm trying to think of very specific.
I hated the test for that, by the way. The circle of fifths. Oh, I hated that test so much.
What test do you mean? Sorry.
I don't. It was a while ago. It was when I was in college. But they would test us on the circle of fifths and.
Oh, how many keys in? So how many sharps in B major? Like 5.
Yes, yeah, that was it. Okay. I hated that so much.
I never did that.
I hated that so much.
But like, I really got interested in the theory side, especially in college and then into uni. Like that was my favorite.
It was
subject.
definitely interesting.
But yeah, like the circle of fifths was the thing that got me to really get the ball rolling. It was one of the early things introduced, and then it's like, oh, like you know, I hadn't even thought of key signatures before. I knew what it was, but not why it was important. And then it was learning stuff like, different instruments are like wind instruments are tuned to different keys. So sometimes you need to transpose music, like move all the notes down 3 notes, but then it's the same notes.
Yeah.
You know it.
Yeah. That's crazy. Those things are crazy. That's I learned that working with my Sibelius program, because they would do it for you. If the notes were for a certain instrument, it recognized that and then change the key signature accordingly.
Yeah, I didn't use Sibelius a lot. I did use it back then, but I thought it took so long to program the notes in. So a little tangent again. I'm all about tangents. You say that you put in the notes by you put in the notes on your computer rather than playing them through a USB keyboard.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do that because you find it? Do you find it quicker? Then, like, for example...
Yeah,
go on.
I think so, yeah. I do find it a lot quicker just to manually put them in. Because for me, I tried using the keyboard method, but then you got to quantize all the notes, make sure they're all in time, and then you got to, like, switch back and forth. And also, like, I have a big keyboard, but not enough space to use it. So what I'm thinking about doing eventually is getting a new setup where I can put the keyboard underneath my desk and then pull it out easier, and then it might make the workflow a little easier. So even though I know it's more common to use a keyboard, I just use the notes because putting them in because it's a lot easier for me personally.
Yeah, definitely nothing wrong with that. I did it before I got a keyboard, but I did really like having it there. I kind of do a bit of both. Like I play it physically, and then I tend to touch it up in post. Because I'm not much of a pianist. I usually have to play it and then edit it around. But sometimes, especially if I'm doing, for example, atmospheric music, I like having I tend to like prefer to play it by hand because the sort of transitions between chords has more spacing and feels more natural.
Okay, I get that. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so like for techniques about okay, here's another thing. So I mentioned like you should look up music theory, and I do. I think that's important and understand sheet music. But if you're someone who's listening to this who's interested in film or game music, you should know that there are techniques specific to those styles that you should be aware of and look into. So that can be like a quick Google search, like game music techniques or film music techniques, stuff like that. Especially in film, I think there's a lot of resources that explain things like motifs, which is a favorite of mine, or like Mickey Mouse.
And
Go on.
if I can like cut in here, I think, and if there's another option too where you don't really have to learn music theory. You really don't. You have to be a good listener though. You have to listen and listen and listen to other artists and music that you probably wouldn't listen to normally. And then don't just listen to it, but listen really deep into it and imagine what are they doing? Like try and pick out every element of the song and imagine like, oh, I didn't recognize the bass did this, or I didn't recognize that the chords had this pattern going in the background. And little things like that will kind of open your eyes more to becoming a composer and layering like a composer.
Layering is very important. I think like having the mix between not having too much and not having too little, and there's something called spacing. So like if you're familiar with frequencies, all sound. I don't know how to explain that in a very very quick and easy way.
That goes into mixing, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like mixing. If you've ever heard the term muddy, when something sounds muddy, it's because there's too much going on in one space.
Yeah, that's something I like. If you have like solid chords, a solid bass, a sub bass, a solid lead, solid vocals, all of that, you're putting too much just all at once, just blam, right? Just like boom, too much. But if you have like a short bass and then give the chords like a little bit of a pattern to it, and then have the vocalists a little more light and bouncy, you're adding more of that space in between each note. And it's like a cake. Do you want like a really thick, heavy, rich cheesecake? I love cheesecake, by the way. But like, do you want like a really heavy, like goopy cake? Or do you want like a light and fluffy cake where every little crumb is like spaced out with a little bit of air in between? That's what makes a track, having that spacing in between each element.
Yeah, and going on your point of like really listening to the music, if you're like a fan of like film and game music and that, you might do this anyway, but maybe do it some more. So, for example, with film, right? When you're watching a film as a musician, you probably are paying attention to the music in some way, and it's important to analyze while you're watching the film how the music accompanies the film. But you should also listen to the music. You should listen to the music on its own, on like Spotify or iTunes or whatever, or YouTube. You should listen to it and pay close attention to the music by itself, so you understand the technical side. And then what I mentioned before about how you should know film techniques, like music film techniques, that's what you learn from watching the film. So you watch the film to see how the music interacts with the film and the purpose the music serves, because if music is overbearing in a film, it takes away from the dialogue or the scene, or the, stuff like that. But you should listen to music on its own for the technical music side as well.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with you on that. Something that I picked up watching films, because even though right now what I'm doing is just more kind of like pop music and drum and bass and just more modern stuff, making music for films is like my passion. That is the number one thing that I am very, very passionate about, and I wish I could do more of it.
So actually, that's a thing. I don't know if you do it at the end of this or whatever, but you should, and me as well, I guess. You should plug like your website, or where people can find your stuff, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, we're getting to that. I'm just
fair enough.
There is one thing I want to say though. That was in regards to all that before I started going in on my fantasy of being a film composer full time. Something that I really love is that knowing when to put music in a film, because sometimes the best time to put music in the film is none.
Yeah.
Removing the music from a film sometimes gives the film even more impact as to the story you're trying to portray to the people watching it. And I love little things of knowing that.
I'm trying to remember the name of the film, sadly. Oh, it's really annoying me. It is an amazing ending scene to a film, like sort of a standoff, and this is kind of going into sound design a little, but what do you call those, like, mining digger things? I don't know how to describe them, but there's like a scene in is that...
While you think about that, something I did want to say as well was, that the film composer did a really good job when you don't even notice that the music's playing during the scene. If you can't tell that there's even music playing at all, that means they did such a good job, because it's perfectly in sync with the mood and with the story.
It's about being able to feel the music, and it's meant to be a part of it, not a...
yes, yeah.
I think that's
absolutely.
I guess it does depend on the film and the scene. Like, obviously, there are films where music is specifically set, where scenes are set to music, or the music is overbearing on purpose. Like, have you seen either Uncut Gems or Get Out, the films?
I don't think so.
Okay, so it's by the Safdie brothers. They're called the directors, and their use of music. Their films are their films are about building tension over time. So, like the main character will, be in a situation, and the point is that you feel the situation growing worse and worse. The whole film, everything sort of slowly builds up, and the music in that at first is very sort of low and not meant to be noticed that much, but as the film goes on into its more tense scenes, the music is supposed to take over and actually be supposed to become overbearing intentionally to create this feeling of like suffocation. Essentially, it's trying to suffocate the audience, and the music plays a part of that. So there are times when a scene needs like music outside of where it needs to be noticed, or in a dramatic scene, like, I don't know, Saw 1, like, for example, like the final scene, the music is very, very noticeable, and it is iconic. But for that scene, it's very appropriate, as it is supposed to be very sort of melodramatic in a sense. And I think in that case, it really serves the purpose of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
I agree. It is, in a way, we're kind of both making points that almost contradict each other, but it's because we're all correct. It's the most important thing is that you pay attention to the scene and try to understand what they are going for, what should the music be noticed in the scene, what emotion should be felt in this scene, stuff like that.
And with what I do right now, the music is more prominent than the video. But with film, it's the other way around, where the video is more prominent than the music score. And your job as a composer is to make sure that what you're doing is for the film. Like, the music is not to take the spotlight. It is to help make the film better.
It's so that's actually a good point, because even with my examples like Saw and that, or I don't know, Star Trek Into Darkness, for example, the music is meant to be noticed, and it uses leitmotifs to.
Oh yeah, it's very.
Should
iconic.
I explain what leitmotifs are? Or is it general knowledge? I don't know. To people listening.
General knowledge.
Yeah, just I guess quickly.
Oh yeah, sure.
I said go ahead.
So
yeah.
leitmotif is like a recurring melody. Usually,
it's the theme.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like the main theme. So again, going back to Saw, in Saw 3, or that music from the end of the first one is used, but the melody is used in different key signatures and meant to evoke a different emotion in certain scenes, and the reuse of a melody serves a purpose because it can be used to identify a character sometimes. So like a melody might be associated with a character, it might be associated with a place or with an event.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah. And to wrap that up, actually, I have a really good I could explain that one too. Like with the melody in films, you'll hear it brought back several times. Like if a character dies, you'll hear it played really sad. If the mood gets really happy towards the end of the film, and like it's a dramatic happy ending, they will play that theme again, but in a much more exciting light. And one of my favorite ones of doing this are two movies by my favorite composer, Michael Giacchino.
Oh
my goodness!
Jurassic World.
I
love his work.
I like what he did for that one too, but that was mostly John Williams who made the theme. But with this one I'm talking about is Ratatouille and Up. Those two movies, oh my goodness. The themes for those, not only are they iconic, but he brings them back several times throughout the movie. From the beginning of Up, where, spoiler alert, his wife dies.
Snake kills what?
I know, I'm sorry. But that theme gets embedded into your head right away from the very beginning, and it has a really sad attachment to it. But he brings it back more and more throughout the movie in a positive light, in a scary light, whatever. And that gave it so much more meaning to it until the very end when he finally plays the last motif for it. And establishing a strong connection for a theme and bringing it back in the current and even future movies is what gives it such a strong impact to the human mind.
I need to see those films again. I've only seen them both once. So I didn't know he wrote that music. I'll have to
Disney fanatic.
I'll have to check that out again from your recommendation.
Absolutely.
I was thinking of I had to look his name because I forget his name sometimes, but Bernard Herrmann on Psycho.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard the Psycho theme? Not the not that part. The actual main theme. That theme and its melody is used like 3 or 4. I think it's 3 times and the first one is for the opening, but it's used to subvert expectations in a way, and also to build tension as you sort of associate it with this killer, but at this point in the film you haven't seen the killer, and it plays when the main character, I think her name is Mary, has just committed a crime, like she stole a lot of money and she's making a run, and that's the second time you hear this music, and it's sort of making it's sort of used to sort of make you sort of question this character in a way. I bet that's how it's used, but it's used again later for the actual psycho killer. It's also just a good story.
How are we on time?
We do need to wrap. You guys are kind of going over already.
I'm sorry.
This has been music.
I was just like,
Yay.
maybe we'll have a separate episode down the line for just like scoring for stuff for film and like.
Yeah.
I think that's just kind of taking over the conversation, and that just like that seems like a lot of the themes we touched upon here can just be like whole 3-hour rants on their own. But anyway, to backtrack a little bit, so Kyle and Thomas, can you give some both free and not free recommendations for music programs? I know we talked about them a little bit, but reiterate them. And then if you want to leave places that people can find you if they're curious, and I think that should be good before we're here for another 5 hours.
I don't have recommendations for free programs, because the ones that I used to use, they're now paid programs, because they were just starting out. But I'd say any paid program has free trials. Just go ahead and use up those free trials as much as you can to learn how it works, and then just you can do a lot with free trials. Yeah.
So I think FL Studio is the running theme. What about you, Thomas? Do you have any recommendations on anything?
So, like I say, I use Logic Pro as my main DAW, which is used for the music. But back in my day, I don't know what price it is now, but I recall it being about £150. So it is a low priced one for its thing. It's not like, for example, Pro Tools, where they ask you which leg you want to sell off first. Pro Tools is usually paid on subscription, and it is really good. But buying it like outright to keep is expensive. It's like Premiere Pro in that sense, where if you bought it outright, it'd be a lot of money, but you could buy a subscription. So I recommend Logic Pro because it is fairly priced. Reaper is another DAW, and it gives a good free trial for you to use, and it is a good program. The one we're using right now, I try not to get too much, I promise this time. Audacity. So the thing that's good about Audacity is you can apply a lot of effects. It's good for a simple recording, but if you're having like issues with, let's say, a recording where there's background noise, or you want to remove the vocals from something, Audacity's good for stuff like that as a free software. So have that. Other than that, if you really want to do synths, like complicated stuff, and get Max MSP. And I think that is it really for recommendations. Get GarageBand if you have no money. It's like Logic Pro but free and less stuff. So try that.
Fair enough. All right. So for people who want to stalk you, where can they find you, Kyle, and then Thomas in general? I think you have a Twitter, right?
YouTube. Just look up Kyle Allen Music, and I'm there. Everything is linked to there. So You'll find me
Fair
there.
enough.
Or KyleAllenMusic.com. That's also my website. So, yeah.
What about you, Thomas? Where can people find you if they want to find you?
Dark alleyway. That's where you find me. So you can find me on Twitter as Tom Collins Composer, and my website with all my all the things I've done on it is the pinned tweet on my profile picture. So that's the best way to find me. Let me check. I just got the name right. Oh, sorry, it's at Thomas Composer, all one word. So at Thomas Composer. I was wrong. What a surprise!
It's okay. It's all good. Oh, okay. So I think that's it for now. Before
I was gonna say thank you guys again so much for joining us today and imparting your musical wisdom upon us.
Upon the children.
My musical wisdom.
Oh my God, Brian Blessed.
Absolutely.
When did you make a cameo?
Dang it, I forgot to mention I do voice acting too. That's a whole section I forgot to mention. No.
Oh, really?
Whatever.
Oh, no.
We need another hour.
We can
Another hour. Yay, another hour. Here we go.
we can do a
New
voice
recording, part
We
2.
can do a voice acting podcast. We can get like a dais or something of people up for that.
That'd be fun.
That's the whole thing. But yeah, I think this is good notes for the future. So we'll probably bring Kyle back, kicking and dragging for something, and Thomas too if we can find him. But anyway, if you're new to the podcast,
Dark Alley.
Yep,
Kyle.
Exactly. Any Dark Alley will do.
Go to Dark Alley.
Say, Thomas Collins.
Well, at the very
backward
least,
3
it looks like-
times and I appear.
Sorry.
well, at
keep
the
going.
very least, it seems like you guys made good friends with each other. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anyway, so if you're new to listening to the podcast, we upload episodes every Wednesday, 6 a.m. Eastern on SoundCloud and iTunes and whatever, Spotify, and then usually at 4 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for the YouTube version in case you find that to be the better version. I don't whatever. I don't care as long as you're listening to it. It's cool. So, yeah, and then make sure you subscribe and join us next week as we talk about something that I don't know yet. And then if you're new, feel free to archive. We're up to about 10 or 11 episodes of this recording, so feel free. We do have a little bit of a library if you're new again. I don't know. Join our Discord server. It's cool, yo. But all right. So we'll see everyone. Or come see us next time on the internet, I guess. Bye, listeners.
Bye.
Listening.